Welcome to episode 212 of We Don't Die Radio. I'm your host, Sandra Champlain, author of the best-selling book called We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. Our guest today is Rob Blackburn. Rob is a history, civics, and language arts elementary school teacher. He is a graduate of the Illinois State University with a BA in English, Language Arts, and Teacher Education. He also happens to be an emerging physical medium here in the United States who sits regularly with the AREI Circle of the Masters of the Light. I met Rob last month at the AREI's Afterlife Symposium in Scottsdale, Arizona. He's a great guy. I'm happy to call him my new friend, and I'm really excited that we get to talk to him on the show today. So, Rob Blackburn, a warm welcome to We Don't Die Radio.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be on. Absolutely wonderful. I've enjoyed the show. I've listened to, I think, every episode. So I am a super fan. I am a fan.
Oh, I had
So it's
no
a thrill
idea.
to be on the show.
Oh yeah. Idea. That's so cool. Well, I remember laying eyes on you at the symposium, and there's a book that was put out about all the speakers and attendees, and you happened to point out that we were on the same page. So
That's right. Literally and figuratively, we are on the same page. In fact, that's what I said when I came up today. I'm like, look at that, we're on the same page.
Well, when I met you then, it's like I know I had read the bio about you being a presenter, and I thought, oh, I got to catch up with this guy. But when I was standing right next to you, I never put two and two together that you were the guy I wanted to meet for
I was just another fan.
About your story. Well, yeah. But anyways, it was just cool. And then obviously the symposium was fantastic, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it was amazing. And just so many cool things have already come out of it. I mean, not only are we connecting, but a lot of people are connecting through, say, for instance, the interest groups that Wendy Zamet is helping to establish. So a lot of that's happening as well. Getting people together, just as they said they were wanting to do, so that they can, in their many interests, pursue, and move forward. Not only connecting with each other, but also finding ways to grow in their various fields, whether it be, mental mediumship, physical mediumship, what do you call it? Past life studies. I'm sorry.
That's
a little
okay.
mind, a little trip there. So I myself got a past life regression while I was at the symposium. So that piqued my interest.
Oh, very
But yeah, so
cool.
many people are coming together for, learning and growing and seeing, what can come from their own personal experience and connecting with others. So it continues. The Symposium Love Fest continues.
Oh, I just can't wait to see what the future holds and be part of it. Now, I didn't know about Wendy Zamet and the interest groups. Is that something she's doing in the Facebook group?
Yes, she is. So she's connecting to the Facebook group.
There's
But she has
Afterlife.
special.
I'm interrupting you. I can't remember what the name of the Facebook group is.
We'll have to like maybe post that. I'll get back to you on that. The exact name of it.
Afterlife
I just clicked onto it
and education. Yeah, it's from the AREI. And who's listening as our listener today, underneath this episode, if you're listening on YouTube, it's probably the easiest way. Just scroll down beneath the episode and I will have a link to that. So it'll be easy to find. Or you can go to WeDon'tDieRadio.com, click on episode 212, and that'll bring you there as well. Because as great as the symposium was, it is, I think, more important to bring this information and have it alive in our lives and share it with others and have this great community of people up to the same thing, as opposed to just waiting for once a year that we get together and talk about it. Like, we want to talk about it all the time.
Yeah, the name of it is the Afterlife Discussion. So AREI Afterlife Discussion.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I just looked it up right here, and it is a linked group. I think Suzanne Wilson, one of the founders of AREI, she is one of those people. The members are all on there. So, you have to ask to join. You can't just pop on. It's not necessarily public to where you can see what's going on. You have to ask to come in, but I don't think that's a hard process for anybody. And then, the interest group she created or established while we were there, she during the sessions, and they had several sessions. And those are the ones I mentioned already, the physical mediumship and the mental mediumship, the instrumental transcommunication group, and I think that was it. I think those are the main ones. But there are others. So those are like springboards for other interest groups. And one of the platforms they're going to use, the platform they're going to use for this is the Zoom technology, which is like a group Skype.
Cool.
And so people are able to get on and connect through these Zoom groups, and then she's training us to run these things, and so we can sort of proliferate it. And so I'll train somebody else to run one, and it'll just spread that way.
How
this way,
fun!
Yeah.
I don't know too much about Zoom, but Suzanne Wilson and I are going to be doing a webinar in December on grief and the afterlife around the holidays, and it's going to be on Zoom, so I must Zoom to figure this out. But I don't think it'll be too hard. But anyways, I'm glad
no,
that
it's super easy.
There's ways to do it. So, Rob, let's hear about Rob. A little bit about you. Where do you live? And maybe a little bit of your background. I know I said what you do for a living, but maybe say it in your own words.
Sure. I live in Illinois. I live in central Illinois, not too far away from Bloomington Normal. And I grew up in Peoria. I lived there for probably 18 years. And then I moved out. I lived in Vermont. I lived in Pennsylvania. I lived in Chicago. But I eventually moved back here. My mother was diagnosed with lung and lymphomic cancer. And so I moved back here with my wife and my young son. And I got a job here in Peoria. And my father took care of my mother through that process. And so we continued to live. My father passed away in 2004 of a heart attack. And it was around that time. Now, I'd been a longtime fan of paranormal radio type programs, and that would include Art Bell and Coast to Coast AM back in the day. Yeah. And so it's a thrill to have George Norrie. He was at the Symposium, of course, and that was a super thrill. But I'd learned about EVP, and this was back in the early 2000s. And he did his Ghost to Ghost show, or he did some of whatever shows. He had the people came on to share their EVPs, and that fascinated me. I had prior experiences as a child, supernatural sorts of experiences, but I had no context for it whatsoever. But as an adult, I decided, well, you know what? I'm going to try working some of this EVP and see what happens. I was a bit traumatized from my father's passing. And it was, as those passings can be traumatizing. And so my mother and father are both gone. My sister was still in town. My brother lived somewhere else. So I didn't have a lot of family except my immediate family. So I wanted to reach out. I wanted to see if I could connect with my mother. And the experiments proved to be pretty successful from the start. Now, not successful by today's standards, but in those standards, I was able to hear this and that, and that was enough to convince me that there was something going on. And that was my first steps into instrumental transcommunication.
So you heard voices on recordings?
Mm-hmm. In fact, the first voice I heard was my mother's voice. And she had a strong whispery, it was a strong whispery Class A. It would be considered a Class A by the old standards. And she said, "Prepare," is what she said. Prepare. I'm like, well, prepare for what? Like, can you help me out? Like, what am I supposed to be preparing for, right? So I kind of ominous, right?
Yeah.
But and I heard from other beings. I developed a relationship with a group of beings that I was communicating with, and this I must have experimented for, I would say, 3 years all by myself. I didn't connect with anybody else. I just did serious research. I did my own research in my house. And my wife would have said that I was a bit obsessive about it, as people tend to get when they get into the field. And it was strange, because the transformation that took place for me was that eventually, and not because it was schizophrenia or something like that, which, when you start hearing voices, you think that you might think that kind of thing. But the experimentation with the EVP allowed me to develop my mental mediumship. And that was clairaudience, of all things. Clairaudience. And I was able to hear the voices of these individuals, without actually recording them. And it would come in, and it still does. It comes in like a radio, someone's flipping a radio on and hear these voices come in. It's often, at best, it can be very clear. At worst, it's like static. And that's what first developed, was this mental mediumship. And it was shocking, because I was able to hear individuals are coming in. I didn't know what to do with it. I had no idea how to do with it, what to do with it. My first thought was, okay, what can I learn from these people that are communicating with me? And so I met a group of individuals through this clairaudience that wanted to communicate with me, and were kind of introducing me to the process. Meanwhile, through this, around 2007, 2008, I went to the Spiritualist Church in Leroy, Illinois, because I was seeking some like-minded people. Mm-hmm. And I figured, why not the Spiritualist, right?
Why not?
Yeah. And so I met with some people over there that knew an individual by the name of Dr. Craig Hogan.
And I know Craig Hogan, as does everyone who was at the Afterlife Symposium. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I had a chance. I heard that he was starting a physical mediumship circle. Now, I didn't at the time know what physical mediumship was. I looked it up, and there was, scant information online about it at the time. Names popped up that were famous names that still pop up now when you look it up.
Right.
But I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to go to some of his interest circles. So like his, I call them interest circles, I guess, but they were meetups. So he had people go over there and practice like mental mediumship or have conversations about the app. He still does this. And, but I joined up his physical circle as soon as I could. So the first meeting, I was at that meeting with a number of other people. There must have been 20 people there. And the first meeting we did was pretty spectacular, but he thought that it wasn't controlled. It wasn't as controlled as it needed to be. And when he instituted some controls, the activity that we got immediately stopped.
Now, wait a minute. Back up. What do you mean it was pretty spectacular in the beginning? Can you paint the picture?
Rocking.
There's 20 people in a room.
So you hear about 20 people in this, and he had a rather large, probably century or so old house near ISU in Normal. And we all went upstairs to this room, which is basically sort of like an attic space, and a bedroom, but it's an attic space. And there must have been, like I said, about 15 to 20 people in this room around a big table, and we all sat in there, and the table was rocking like crazy.
On its own?
Presumably on its own, right? I entered a long time ago. I came into this afterlife studies very skeptical.
Right.
You can relate to that completely.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah.
If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Yeah.
Right. So we have to be very critical. So Craig as well, very much so. I think everybody in this field. I mean, the Zamets, pride themselves on their deductive, So we're up there, and the table's rocking like mad, and it's answering questions, the rocking back and forth and such. And Craig sort of raised an eyebrow to that. He's like, okay, this is interesting, but let's put some controls on it. Let's make sure that it is, I think he used glow-in-the-dark tape, because the room has to be completely black, right? And no light in it. And so he put glow-in-the-dark tape, and monitored where people's hands were to make sure that they were on the table, not underneath it. And
not manipulating it.
Mm-hmm. And when he did that, the activity ceased. So not to say that there was fraud intentionally, but I think there's a human nature element there that when something's moved, I don't know. So whatever it was, it stopped, okay? I'm not going to go any further with that, but whatever it was, it stopped. And the numbers cut in half. So people didn't want to be a part of it if they couldn't do it the way they wanted to do it. And so it would really dwindle down to a few of us. Now, the wonderful people at the Spiritualist Church, I'm not painting a dark picture of them whatsoever. They're great people.
Mm-hmm.
But, it wasn't something they were interested in doing if they didn't do it perhaps a traditional way. I don't know. Whatever the case was, the numbers cut in half. There was only a few of us there, maybe 10.
Mm-hmm.
And then it dwindled down to, I think, about 8 or 7 of us. And that I was then a permanent member of this physical circle.
And when did this start?
We were
when was this?
around, I don't want to say about 2008.
This is a
around
while
that time.
now, Rob. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was. So we wanted to sit consistently.
Okay.
And so we sat once a week. I think it was either on a Saturday or Sunday. And that circle changed over time. And the physical circle has taken many different forms. We've had many different members.
Mm-hmm.
So over the years, there has been breaks. There have been times where the circle's focus went to more mental mediumship. So it hasn't been a consistent circle for a number of years. But it was, for the most part, it's been a physical circle. So the development part, whenever that kicked in for me personally, I can't say. I know that they started working with members of the physical circle. They must have, because phenomena was taking place, little bits here and there.
Okay, now there's
but
people.
It wasn't.
I hate to interrupt you. There's people that don't know really what physical mediumship is. Maybe not an easy thing to just sum up in a couple of sentences.
Sure.
But stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff moves.
Yeah. So I mean, in short, it's where these unseen forces, a team, presumably, is manipulating the energy, either theirs or the sitters, usually both, in order to manipulate objects in the room. Now, there's a good conversation about what's happening now in physical mediumship, and that's a great thing to talk about. But at the time, what they do, and it's more revealed now, what they do is they work with energy. Mm-hmm. That means their energy and the energy of the sitters. And they use that energy to manipulate objects in the room, but they also use that energy to transform the sitters. They transform the sitters into better conduits of the energy they want to push through. So they either have greater control, or they're coming up with their own ideas as to what they want to do with the people that are involved. Because they're I don't want to say puppet masters, but they're a bit like that, where they're planning out and deciding how best to use certain individuals. And so they're developing the sitters. And whoever then they decide, okay, this person would be best for this, or this person would be best for that, that's how they'll do it. Whether someone becomes a trance medium, where an unseen personality is speaking through them, mm-hmm. or someone becomes a physical medium in the sense of being able to facilitate ectoplasm, and then ectoplasm is then manipulated and used by the team to lift objects or speak, creating an ectoplasmic voice box or whatever it might be. But now, that seems to be the thing that they're doing. They're using energy in order to not only entertain the sitters, but to use that energy then in some way to help develop the physical mediums.
I get this picture that as much as we are trying to get proof of the afterlife on our side, there's this whole team of invisible folks that are using the people willing to try to say, hey, we're here. This is what we can do. Let's work together. And I personally have sat with David Thompson, Scott Milligan a few times, and taken a course on trance mediumship over at Arthur Findlay College. And on the show, we've talked to Robin Foy and, Jan Vanderzandy, and, all this. I am 100% convinced in the reality of physical mediumship. And, I do get that there's a lot of room for skepticism because happens in the dark. Most of the time, there have been people who have done really fraudulent things, preying on grieving people. But to me, it's like one of the things I am most fascinated by. So
me too.
To get that you're my new friend here in the United States, and you've been sitting and something's building, it's like, I want to hear your story. Yeah.
Yeah, it's there's over the years there's been different kinds of phenomena. some of the earliest phenomena that we had was lights. Okay, so little lights that would pop, or like little starbursts, that kind of thing. That seems to be the most elementary kinds of things. But as for, it's very subtle. They'll work on you. They'll build the energy in the room. They'll work on you. You won't realize you're being worked on. It seems to be the more intense work when they really are working with a physical medium for development. They're going to do a lot of work on the nervous system. The nervous system seems to be the body system that they really need to adjust and make sure that is the way they want it to be. They've even talked about, and they've talked about it with other circles too, but they talked about it with ours. They talk about manipulating us on a molecular level or changing us on a molecular level, and that's like, wow, we can kind of comprehend what that is, but we really don't understand what that means. So they're altering our physical bodies in order to help facilitate the energies that they want to bring in from the other side.
Well, who's talking when you say they're telling us? Do you have somebody that's a medium there speaking? Are you speaking?
Well, we have different. That's a great question. We have different ways and means of getting their information across. So one of the best, I think, is through the direct evidential kind of table knocking, that we can ask yes or no questions, and the yes or no questions are answered, that way. We also have confirmation from mental mediums. Outside the circle, Suzanne Wilson. Mm-hmm. Suzanne Wilson has commented, and she's worked with her team and conveyed information to us. We also have a very good mental mediumship that is sitting with us, Vicky, and we have other. Everybody at the table's a medium, but she is especially good at connecting with the team. And how we know what she's saying is what she's conveying is accurate is that she will get an impression from the team, an idea, images, even a statement, and the table will knock. We will have then a physical manifestation that takes place to validate what she's saying. So it's not like we're sort of getting ideas and just running with the ideas. That's extremely dangerous, right? Because we could run ourselves right down a rabbit hole, right? And be very far from the truth. But it seems to be...
When you say the table knocks, is it a table that's on a hardwood surface and that it's, like it bangs once for yes and twice for no or something like that?
Yeah, yes, a bit like that, yeah. So it's actually a larger table. It's a larger table, like a dinner table type table. It's... well, I shouldn't say it's that big, but it's larger than your typical. Yeah, it's larger than your typical seance table, which tends to be very light, and be able to be manipulated very easily by the team. So we have a larger table, yes, and it knocks repeatedly. So we don't really have a one for yes, two for no kind of thing. It's more like no is nothing, and yes is a number of bangs.
That's wild.
So, yeah. And they have, and it's really weird,
Yeah.
It's because it's even after all these years, it's difficult to kind of get over it. You really can't ever get over it because in our normal daily lives, we see an object hits another object, makes a sound. We tend to correlate those two things, and it's normal. Here, sometimes sounds happen. It's not even on the table. It's like a popping noise, like the air is enveloped into itself and makes a noise, and that kind of thing. So, but yeah, as for the validation, comes from the physical manifestations, and of course preceded by the information that Vicky gets. And it's not just Vicky; it's Anne and Sally as well that can get the information. But that's just one source. I sit in a cabinet. So I'm not privy to a lot of it.
Yeah, let's talk about the cabinet.
Okay. Traditionally, as your listeners will know, if they're familiar with physical mediumship,
yep.
It is a space apart from the circle. That usually is a curtain or something that closes it off. Where traditionally energy is, and I know this for absolute fact because I felt it, I feel it every week, is congealed, so to speak, or it is masked inside that that space. It's like a protective space within the circle
Mm-hmm.
space.
Right.
And within that space, then the development can happen. Now, later on, when if there's ectoplasmic manifestation and whatnot, they'll tend to use that as a place where the ectoplasm can kind of come out of the cabinet and then can come back into the cabinet, keeping the medium safe, right? Keeping the medium apart. They don't necessarily have to sit in the cabinet, but for development, I find it absolutely necessary because in my limited experience, really, I mean, the energy builds in that space, and it helps very much because I've sat outside the cabinet in development and sat inside the cabinet in development, and inside it's far more accelerated. You can really feel it all around. The distractions aren't there.
Just concentrated energy.
Mm-hmm, yes,
Yeah.
very much so.
Did you ever think as a teacher you'd be talking about seances and ectoplasm?
Oddly enough, I don't talk about that kind of thing in the classroom.
No,
but
I
since
didn't
I
suggest
teach
that.
ancient history, since I teach ancient history and I teach, about the Neolithic, Paleolithic period, we touch on these shamanistic traditions, and I tend to think in the back of my mind, this sort of thing has been going on since the beginning of human experience.
Yes.
I just can't imagine. I'm wondering if on top of those ziggurats, in Sumer or in Babylon, in those temple spaces, whether or not priests were set and exuded ectoplasm, and then, there's guides would come through and take that ectoplasm over their bodies and speak to them. I mean, you got to wonder about, we have no proof of that, of course, but you got to wonder about, the connections it has and the implications it has on human history. So yeah, I never talk about it, but it haunts the back of my mind. Just the implications.
Of course. And I remember, I don't know if it was Craig Hogan or someone else talking about, was it Dan Aykroyd who's had relatives that were into spiritualism? And so when but when the movie came out, and talking about ectoplasm, that's where the word came from. Because is that the story? Something like that?
Well,
Ghostbusters.
He's like Dan Aykroyd's a fifth generation spiritualist. Mm-hmm. Well, I should say he comes from a fifth generation spiritualist family. His father wrote a book on spiritualism and his experiences. So people can Google that up. Mm-hmm. So Dan Aykroyd has had a deep, familiar relationship with the supernatural, and specifically the religion of spiritualism, or the science of spiritualism, whatever you want to call it.
So the movie Ghostbusters come out, and we associate ectoplasm with this green slimy stuff. But in reality,
that's the comedian.
He's great. But it's so exciting to me because to someone who has never experienced this, and especially the first time I went to England, to the UK, to sit with Scott Milligan, David Thompson in seances, I was scared to death. I'm like, what am I doing? This is, it's telling me stuff's going to fly around, and, people can be, appear, even though it's dark, but they can touch you and talk to you, and it could be your relatives. And I thought, what is going on here? But I had to go. I had to see, is this real? And beyond a shadow of a doubt, the things that I experienced, and I've talked to, as you know, about it on the show, it's like, it is real. So I'm so excited because right now, there's a handful of people that we hear about that are physical mediums out in the world. And I have this really strong instinct, talking to Robin Foy and Jan van der Zande, that there are these groups that are around the world that are sitting just like you are, and things, sitting for physical mediumship, and it's exciting to hear your journey.
It's just beginning. How long they've been working with me personally, I can't say. How long will it be
all
before
your life? Who knows?
Who knows? Right? I mean, we don't know, and it's mind blowing. And if people are open to it, that's the thing. Anybody can sit, and if like-minded, loving people sit for the right intention,
Mm-hmm.
and they keep a schedule and keep all the drama outside the seance door,
Mm-hmm.
and they sit in love, and then the process of whatever protocols they choose to use, which there's a standard protocol, but and they sit and they laugh and they sing and they ask for spirit to come through.
Mm-hmm.
Spirit will eventually manifest itself, however, in whatever way, will manifest itself. Now, the huge part of that is coming together out of love, coming together out of cooperation,
Yeah.
unity,
Yep.
and not for. It is not for self-aggrandizement. It's not for any kind of self-benefit.
Right.
It is opening itself up to be used by spirit. That's the thing. You want to say, it's like in a classroom. How can I be of best use to these kids?
Exactly.
How can I make
serve?
that different?
Yeah.
Yeah. How can I serve? And the thing is, it's a blast, right? It's a blast anyway. So you're going to have fun along the way. Whether what you're doing, it matters. But whatever they have you do, it's going to be fun
And one of the best
and mind blowing.
energy generators is laughter. So I had no
Mm-hmm.
idea when I went that it's going on 1 year actually. It was our United States Thanksgiving last year that I was in my very first seance room, and the laughter and singing Christmas carols and singing like "I Will Survive," and I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me! This is fun. It's in the
Yeah.
dark, but it's fun.
Yeah, and that's not all of it's in the dark. So we have there are physical mediums now that are working exclusively with, as Robin Foy would tell you, working with energy.
Yes.
The energy form, which and I was thinking about it. Famous physical mediums in the past where they could work in white light. There was no evidence of ectoplasm,
Mm-hmm.
at least in certain instances. And D.D. Hume would be one of these, the mid-19th century, late 19th century physical medium, who is one of the most spectacular of all time, known to have levitated out a window and come back through another window.
Right.
Yeah. And another thing, worked with Crookes, the English scientist, and proved to him, without a shadow, beyond there's something going on there.
Mm-hmm.
And he must have worked in energy because there was no ectoplasm there. Now, there could be in other instances where he sat and they could exude it, and he did that. But as for being in the white light, there might not have been. So energy mediumship might be very old. It might be akin to actually the kind of energy that they're now. Robin Foy's experience is, I think, spectacular, and that's a different kind of energy. If you read, when you read his books, Witnessing the Impossible, or read the account in Skull Experiment, different kind of thing. But under other circumstances, the same kind of energy could be used or has been used in places that are supposedly haunted. You have the same kind of phenomena takes place. You have the levitation of objects. You have the banging on the wall.
Right.
And this is not ectoplasm. This is energy coming from another place or being taken from the people that are living there. So this currency of energy might be very accessible to the other side. Now, that being said, imagine if that energy was focused with an intent and a team behind it, right? And now you have someone who could facilitate this energy from the other side on their own in order to produce phenomena. And that, to me, is that the energy side of physical mediumship is absolutely fascinating. We're so focused on the ectoplasm, but the energy work is, I think, can be just as phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think based on it being 2017, almost 2018, if I was in the spirit world, I would say, okay, folks, we need some more things that are out of the dark. Too many people, to really have this be real and have people want to get involved. Let's see what can happen under light. Yeah, so it's great.
Yep.
So can we talk about how you're being used, like in your development now? At some point, somebody said, let's put Rob in the cabinet, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, right. So there were indications of ectoplasm previously,
Oh, yeah.
And there were indications that had been used. I think there was Suzanne Wilson. I had a reading with Suzanne Wilson back. It was 2 symposiums ago. And, we'd been sitting in the physical circle, and I had not presumed to think that I was being used in that way. But she said to me, she said, well, you're a mental medium, you have the clairaudience. But I said, she said, but you have the ectoplasm, and it looks like the ectoplasm had been used, but then you kind of turned it off because you were concerned about the safety of the group, that you were protecting the circle. So you kind of you turned it off.
Huh.
And of course, I didn't know what she was talking about. Like, I thought that there had been times where I had gone into a trance, but I may not have realized it because I popped back out, and we were in the dark, so ectoplasm could have been exuded, but it wasn't like it was phenomenal. It wasn't like David Thompson or anything developed, right? It wasn't anything super developed, but they were fiddling around with it, and so that, to me, was an indication that maybe we should try, working in that way, working for physical development. Getting a cabinet, and Craig, put together a cabinet and started sitting in a cabinet. And wouldn't you know it, as soon as I get into the cabinet, I'm being taken into trance. And they begin working with me to develop, working on the nervous system, working on the body system, develop the physical manifestation. Now, the most of what we're getting in the circle is probably energy. Most likely energy for right now. But oddly enough, well, maybe not oddly, more recently, I say oddly enough,
It's
right?
all odd.
Like that matters anymore.
In a good way.
Like that matters.
In a good way, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sitting in the circle, and I'm taken. So it's hard to describe, but when you're taken into trance, for me, it begins as something cold. You can feel like almost a cold over your skin a little bit. It's like you can know their presence are there. I know that sounds really not too cold, but it feels like there's a layer of just something a little colder on your skin.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can feel it. It's sort of like a kind of a warm energy kind of moving through your body. You get sort of lethargic, and you begin to go into a light trance. And from that light trance, then you're just knocked out. You cease to exist in a sense consciously. When that happens, you don't know that it happened.
Right.
It just happened. And for me, and as well as another physical mediumship that I was talking to, it was Jan Vandersand, his physical medium. We kind of connected, Brian and I, and we were talking about our mutual experience, and he was echoing the same thing and saying, he's kind of in the beginning, and maybe it's different for everybody, but for us anyway, we were kind of going in and out. We're going in and out. So we're in a semi-trance, and then we're out, and then back into a semi-trance, and then back out to where we're not conscious anymore. And when you're not conscious, you don't know that you're not conscious. It's like you're being blacked out, like anesthetized, anesthetized. You're out. And so I think this most recently here, this happened before, and maybe this is what was talking about. I felt since coming, I was in a semi-trance at this point. I may be put in that trance state so I can feel it, so they can tell me what they were doing. I can feel something coming out of my left nostril.
How about that?
And then I felt that kind of, and then I felt something coming out of my right nostril.
Huh.
Where they're expecting to think what they're doing, and so they're moving that, and it felt not like water coming out of your nose. Okay, it didn't feel like that. Now, I don't have much experience in talking to other physical mediums and what they think what feels like what. Mm-hmm. I think for the most part, people are out when that kind of thing takes place. But what was coming out probably wasn't super solid, but it certainly wasn't, not solid.
Right.
And it was very clearly something coming out. And I'm in a paralyzed kind of state. I'm in a semi-trance. I can feel it coming out. And then, again, like I said, you pop in and out of consciousness. So these early stages of physical development, which are basically undocumented, except amongst physical mediums that want to talk about it, which is really fascinating when we talk about these interest groups, people actually communicating these things. Mm-hmm. I think you're going in and out. Now, for more developed mediums like Milligan and Thompson, they're out completely, presumably, and when the phenomena takes place. Or, they've been developed in a different way. But in the beginning, at least, where I'm at, you pop in and out of consciousness. And afterwards, after you're done, and we have a kind of a pattern with our circle, we play music, and like an hour and a half of music, and at the end of that hour and a half, with the last song, that's when we're done. They generally get me up and move me out of that trance state by the last song. Afterwards, I'm pretty wiped out.
Sure, yes.
I have a deep sensitivity to light. Light is really harsh, even a half hour afterwards. My sensitivity to light is really severe. Luckily, I wear glasses, and it helps a little bit because I have like the tinted glasses kind of thing, and it helps a little bit protect the eyes. But your body is worn out the next day. Like when I'm teaching the next day at school, I'm just I gotta drink some more extra coffee. I'm physically worn out. So whatever they do taxes the body quite a bit. At least initially, eat a couple bits of candy. We eat little Twix bar or a little Kit Kat bar afterwards. Everybody in the circle does. It's a ritual we have, but that's very helpful. To get that little candy at the end of the séance. But yes. Yeah, the early stages of this is very taxing on the body.
Well, I think that continues because even Scott says he's wiped out, and he says any of these so-called physical mediums out there that are demonstrating, every night this week I'm doing a seance, and they're vomiting gemstones and things like that. They may not be the real deal,
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on.
I wish I could vomit gemstones.
Well, I don't think they're real gemstones, but
no, I know. I'm just saying that.
That seems
Christmas
to be
early this year, right?
Yeah. So
no, I'm kidding. Yeah.
No, because
no, I see what you're saying. It's not. It seems a little dubious, right? It seems a little dubious.
It does, and then you look at the price tag of how much it costs to go to one of these seances, and sometimes it just screams inauthentic to me. So,
yeah.
And it's only because I've actually been with Scott Milligan's seance and David Thompson that I feel like. I don't want to say authority, but I have trust that it's the real deal, so I haven't explored the others, so I don't know. Maybe they can
step by step,
vomit
right?
gemstones and stuff, but anyways, bottom line is I know from Scott, because I know him better than David, that he's exhausted, he's wiped out. I mean, this is really a physical, hence the term physical mediumship. I mean, it takes a toll on the body.
Yeah, Brian and I both have a devoted sitting space in our houses. So we were talking about this. I was moved to create a little seance room in my house to sit in, and the team told me, it was over the summer, they said they wanted me to sit for 2 hours.
Wow.
And they, at that time, 2 hours every other day, or like 3 days a week, something like that. And so they wanted to do some development. So I basically fixed this room up in my basement, set it up as I knew to do as a seance room, and sat. They were knocking me out just as they do in the cabinet. That has been maintained since this summer. Now I don't sit as much because during the school year, I really can't come home and do it. I'm too wiped out. But I do it on the afternoon. And here, this is interesting. Occasionally I get phenomena in the room, and because I'm clairaudient, they guide me through. Sometimes they tell me everything's great, everything's looking. The team will communicate with me clairaudiently and tell me what's going on, and which is a benefit. And that's fascinating in of itself. It's not validating because I can't validate that. I can only say that this is what I heard, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, I hold that personally. I hold that to myself. I don't really share a lot of what they're saying because I'm not convinced, because I don't have the validation that they are,
right.
who they say. So I'm very careful about that. But I take it all in. But if I take a nap afterwards, if I'm really wiped out, like the other day, I sat down, laid down after I sat for an hour and a half. I tried to take a nap. My whole body was like there were bugs crawling on it, like me tingling all over, pricklies all over my skin.
Wow.
And despite that, I was rolling around and I got a little bit of a cat nap. But towards the end of it, my brain again, nervous system, brain, these sort of, I don't know what they are, but they're like these little brain zaps that literally feels like your head is being shocked with electricity.
Wow.
Voltage, I guess. I don't know. Yes. And so clearly, not a good idea to take a nap after sitting, because the nervous system work that they're doing is, very good. And, if you were to take a nap afterwards, it's nice. So there are these physical manifestations that take place just in your own body, changes in your body due to their work that are not mapped out, that no one tells us, and that we're kind of learning firsthand as we go along. And it's not for the faint of heart, and it's certainly not for anybody that wants to have kosher all the time with their body. There will be odd things that take place with the physical body. Some people get burns. Some people get other physical effects, like a rash on their skin. Odd things happen when the system is played with. And, so this uncharted territory, at least for me, because I haven't read a manual on it,
I don't know how many manuals there are. It's interesting, Robert.
Yeah.
Sound kind of cuts in and out. And
I'm sorry. Yeah.
well, I don't think you need to apologize, but it was interesting because when I interviewed Scott, the same thing happened. And, he tried changing his location and everything, and it's like, nothing's working. And so my mind's going, well, they're two physical mediums. They're so powerful that they're... You don't know.
The cell stuff that's going on here. I hope you caught what I was saying.
Yeah.
I, being a teacher, I tend to ramble on, but my apologies on that. I hope.
No,
but it's,
don't,
the
don't
nervous
apologize.
system is
I think it's great. Let me ask you just a nervous system question.
sure.
Because when I started studying this stuff last year, I've been trying to sit on my own, with no real intention. You and I will talk sometime about trance mediumship because I think that's awesome stuff. But I have been
amazing stuff,
having this this jolt of electricity from my midsection that it's almost like in the movies when somebody's it's the paddles on them and they go clear and their whole body shakes.
Wow.
But it's coming from just below, center of my ribs, I guess, solar plexus area.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so bothersome that and it was only when I was sitting with the intention of, connecting and stuff. Didn't hurt, but it was weird. And so I Googled, I don't even know what I put in the Google search term. But you probably did hear my interview with Chris Ratter, the psychic surgeon. And he's a physical medium who works on people, and there's been healings and stuff that have occurred. But in the book that he wrote, that was one of the side effects that had started happening with him, and he described it to a T. And so I thought, now this is interesting. So I kind of made a pact with the spirit world based on his recommendation, also Arthur Findlay College, that, that doesn't need to happen. Maybe give me one little jolt to tell me you're here, but then it doesn't have to continue. And no kidding, once I put in that request to God, the universe, the spirit team, that's exactly what I get. When I sit, I'll get a couple of those jolts. It doesn't hurt, but it's like, oh, okay, team's here. And then I just do my best to sit. What it's going to develop into, I don't know, and I don't have the time that I could sit regularly every Saturday or anything like that. But I have offered myself to be used for the betterment of mankind, and Yeah, I think it's fascinating. But when you
That is
talked
fast.
about,
It sounds.
go ahead.
Oh no, I would say it sounds like you're being developed. I mean,
Yeah,
that kind of activity sounds like they were making headway to develop you in some way.
yeah, yeah. And it
Do you
happens all the
see it?
time. It happens all the time when I sit. And when you mention the nervous system, I'm thinking,
Mm-hmm.
hmm, hmm. And so this Thanksgiving, I'm going back to this Banyan Retreat Center, and there's a course called Voices of the Past. And Alexander is there, and
Oh, cool.
Scott Milligan. And Stuart Alexander's retired as a physical medium, but he's going to be doing some lectures. And I just can't wait to be back there. And some of the
Yeah.
listeners are coming with me, and of course they don't know what to experience, but if Sandra's there, we're going to be okay. But they're going to find out that
Yeah.
it's fun and really great. So I don't know, and sometimes I feel like we're only given what we need to know at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so for me, yeah, maybe it's not sitting in a circle, but on my own, sitting, and
Well, that's
who knows?
yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. They'll take you down a path and then move you to another path if that's what they think you could be best at.
Yeah.
They are in total control. And our faith in this loving force that we say are teams, but really they're these beings who of great mind and great heart. And they're one of the things, they work with our loved ones. I've heard from my mother multiple occasions, uh, tend to be part teams that help facilitate certain things that are going on in physical circles or family members. We've come across that many times. So people are surrounded by, in the development, they're surrounded by a lot of love and a lot of support. Sitting by yourself, you still have that same support, I'd imagine, right? And having physical reactions like that while you're sitting, I think that's pretty stupendous. So the things that we came out of, one of the things we've come to understand, and I was talking to Brian about this idea of chi, the old notion, and ka for the Egyptians, this idea of chi, this energy that is all around us all the time, that is then used by the body to help manifest physical phenomena, specifically healing, used by the Taoists. They talked about it, whatever. So this idea of this energy, and that is directly related to the nervous system, and runs everywhere where the nervous system runs. So this chi energy. I asked once in the seance circle when I wasn't in the cabinet. I asked about chi. Is chi a reality?
Yeah.
And of course I got knocks, all kinds of knocks. So so this idea that this energy force is all around us, this sort of universal energy force, can be used by us and used by the teams to help facilitate, a growth in our physical bodies so that we can help manifest physical phenomena through them, through the team. So consciousness directed, by the team and directed by how they want us to grow. But it's I think a very real thing. And so I tend to think about this chi force and how this chi force is possibly related to the development of physical mediumship in all its forms, including trance, including direct voice, including all of it, and how, and there's just so many mysteries. So I would suggest maybe take a look at that and ask Stuart Alexander and ask Scott Milligan about their early development and what that looked like, what that felt like, if they can remember, because maybe they went to 0 to 100 miles an hour real fast, and I'm in a Model A and I'm just kind of chugging along.
No, I don't know Stuart's story, but I know Scott. It took time and dedication, and just I think things happened right at the beginning, enough to give him the taste that this is real, and then
Hmm.
years went by of sitting
Yeah.
and dedication and things. So and for anyone listening, it might sound weird, but there's nothing, and maybe you can agree with this, Rob. There's nothing scary about it. It's love. It's this
No.
feeling of not being alone. And I tell
Hmm.
you, we I know for myself personally, I spend a lot of time alone, And even though we record these interviews and share them, it's as human beings, it's easier to forget who we are and get caught up in our ego and day-to-day life. But
Mm-hmm.
to sit quietly, and sometimes I just do it just before going to bed, and quiet my mind the best I can with a loving intent to connect. And then, I get this little jolt of electricity going through me. But then I'll get visions in my mind's eye of like a little snapshot of my father or people that I don't even know.
Yeah.
And one guy showed up in my mind's eye, and I'm like, who are you? Like, I didn't even know. And then all of a sudden I look up, it's Thomas Edison. When
Oh,
I
wow.
started looking up, and for whatever reason, I'd been fascinated studying Thomas Edison,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden, it's like that's what he looked like in his younger days. Like so. I don't know
Yeah.
if he's coming through or if he's not,
Yeah.
but and I'm really loving learning about the Wright brothers
Mm-hmm.
but these are people that had dreams that the world said it's not possible, and
Right.
they changed the course of humanity. And I think what we're doing with AREI and all the afterlife stuff is the day will come that it will be commonplace that we really know that life after death is real. Our
Mm-hmm.
ancestors and relatives are around. Our life is for a purpose. There's ways to connect. And, more importantly, our life is for a reason. And I think that's probably why these things are interesting me right now, because it's like, we got to go for it. And it's okay to fail 1,000 times on all these
Mm-hmm.
different experiences for that one time that, we have a light bulb, so to speak, with like Edison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we move forward to the next sphere, as Leslie Flint's people would call it, the next sphere, the
Mm-hmm.
afterlife, we will be the team. We will play a part in the team. No doubt we'll be drafted to help out these other circles.
No
I
doubt.
tend to think about that. Like, so decades from now, when I pass, I'll be, look, I guess I know what I'll be doing. In the afterlife for at least a long while. I'll be helping to work with these other teams that are here on Earth. And it's about time, I think,
Yeah.
humanity needs to step beyond its territoriality, step beyond its ego, step beyond these things that have been holding us back to really kind of, introduce us into this next phase of understanding reality. Get away from the reductionist kind of materialist science that we seem to be chained to.
Mm-hmm.
And even in our textbooks, it's a ridiculous thing. In science textbooks, there's still, quantum physics, of course, is taking us beyond that a bit too. So, it's about time that we step out into greater reality.
Yeah, and to have people sitting ourselves and having stuff happen. I mean, apports
Mm-hmm.
is the word for things coming out of nowhere, whether it's pennies or dimes or, who, gosh, only knows what. It's at some point you'll be sitting in your circle, and I know a friend of mine and her husband. He's a physical medium in Germany, and the two of them just sit together, and they had this beautiful, huge feather showed up in it just in their room that was not there when they started. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, so when
Mm-hmm.
people start experiencing these kind of things and really get that we're not alone, your loved ones are around, don't be afraid of death, don't be afraid of life,
Mm-hmm.
get excited by this. I think,
Mm-hmm.
this kind of thing will be happening. I more
Yeah.
than think it. I think
Yeah.
I know it. I know it.
Yeah, and the more people that are dedicated to this, and again, like you say, you're slowing yourself down. You're taking yourself out of like the busy day and the
Mm-hmm.
stresses, the worries, the things that are sort of bringing us slowly into our coffins, of stress. We are releasing ourselves. We're giving ourselves over to this greater consciousness. We're feeling the love. We're allowing that connection, and that sounds woo-woo to some people, but I would ask anybody, to sit down, turn your cell phone off, sit in the quiet, or put on some light, lovely music in the background. Close your eyes and just breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Just breathe, right? And just listen to your breath and go through a meditation and just feel that and ask for their loved ones to come through. Ask for their loved ones to come through and just say hello. If they can get over their fear, whatever that might be, there's a loved one that will reach out to them
Sure
and
is.
will make contact, in some way. I mean, this is exactly how accessible these people are. You say Thomas Edison and others, they are people that are accessible to us. It is not far-fetched. It is not far-fetched at all. These beings are out there to help and connect and to show us and teach us,
And there are people that are going to call us crazy. And, I'm listening to this audiobook on the Wright brothers, and there was somebody who was, I don't remember who he was, like a commander in the Navy, just a really prominent figure. And he called the Wright brothers nuts, whatever the word was in the early 1900s. But crazy, it's never going to happen. It's impossible for man to get in the air. And so people didn't believe in what they were doing. So there's going to be good people that have really strong beliefs. And I tell anybody who's listening, there is reality to this, even though some of it sounds kind of crazy. I get it. I do.
Mm-hmm.
I am the skeptic discovering life after death. But if this piques your interest even a teeny bit, there's a reason. And I think it's because you've got a spirit team on your side that wants you to get excited and wants to work with you in some way. And I tell you, Rob, this is fun. I had such a blast at the symposium, and so many like-minded people, so much laughter, so much fun. Instead of it being me, sitting in my room recording these conversations, but having nobody in my real life that I talk to about this, I want all of us to have people in our circles of people that we see every day that we can talk this stuff about, so.
The potential for growth is just beyond imagination, connecting to the other side, but also just personal growth, understanding the obstacles that we have individually, to get over. Are we stuck in a cycle of fear? Are we worried about this? Why is that? I mean, there's a lot of individual work that we can do with ourselves as we go through this process of connecting to the other side. It's very, very beneficial. And it's free. You're not paying some psychiatrist for it either, Not to say that people shouldn't get therapy or whatever, but if they need it. But I'm saying that there is a therapeutic aspect to connecting in love with those on the other side.
Mm-hmm. I had my last interview was a great one. And gentleman I was talking to, he was saying when he goes hiking and he's quieting his mind and he's just one with the trees and hiking and the sky and everything, he gets these really great words of wisdom that come, whether you call it God or the universe. And then I had told him I'd gone on vacation and I met a security guard that worked at a beach in the Virgin Islands, older guy, and he had the most poetic stories about life and love and the meaning of life. And I'm thinking, and I wanted to get the book that he learned all this stuff. And he says, I didn't learn this from any book. He says, I just listened to the waves. This stuff comes. So we look so often outside of ourselves for the answer. But just like you said, when we can start paying attention to our breath and quiet, then we can listen and we can hear so much. Anyways, Rob, this is so exciting to talk to you. We've already talked an hour, though, so I think I should let you get to bed so you can get a fresh start for your teacher day tomorrow.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to share that I didn't ask you? I think this is just the beginning of a great friendship and hearing about your adventures and your journey.
Yeah, absolutely, and your adventures as well. I'm fascinated now that you told me about the solar plexus zapping. I'm absolutely fascinated with that. This is, I think, something we need to get a handle on is this development process. I know it's different for everybody, but I really, and Craig would agree with this, that we're all about gathering information so that we can correlate our information and give people some kind of expectancy as to what the process looks like depending on the development.
Right.
And that's, I think, important because that has not yet happened. And AREI is in a good position to develop that, and to see in connecting with others. Other than just reiterating the availability of these interest groups that AREI has established through Wendy's Amit on Facebook and then through the Zoom meetings. I would really encourage anybody that's interested in being part of something like that to reach out and go to Facebook and connect with the AREI Circle there, and inquire about being part of this interest group, whatever it might be. And there's several different areas. It's not just the three that I mentioned. It's several different areas. There's more, and who knows what that person can learn? Who knows, or could experience, or what that could grow into.
Well, when you think about even when the cell phone technology first came out, there were these giant, big, clunky, huge things.
Yeah.
And to have
Right.
so many minds working on the same project, to see how fast technology has changed. And I think in the world of the afterlife, you get enough people working on instrumental transcommunication and sitting for physical mediumship and who knows what else happening, spirit artists, whatever. But people working together with the same intention, things will start happening fast and growing fast, and there'll be new ways of connecting. And yeah, it's super duper exciting. And I want to encourage people too to join AREI. It's either $25 or $35 a year, but to go to afterlifeinstitute.org. Pay attention to the website afterlifestudies.org, because they'll announce the dates for the 2018 Symposium, which we're going to be at, because gosh, that was so great.
I can't wait. I wish it was like, twice a year, I mean, I'd be there twice a year easy. I mean, it's that cool.
Yeah. Well, I think there's going to be probably, other events put on over time, because there's such a demand. So many people couldn't make that one, or we might have to do one in Australia, in the UK. You'll travel. I know you will.
Yeah, I'll travel. I'll go to Australia. It'd be great.
Yeah, I know. Me too. Well, Rob, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being our guest here today.
It was my absolute pleasure. I loved it. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, of course. And we'll talk, because I want to share. Yeah, you and I will talk about transmediumship and things. And I would love it if you'd be a guest on again, and we can just have one of these fireside chats, so to speak.
Yeah, I love that. Love that.
Yeah, it's fun. It really is fun. And to our listener, thank you for spending this hour with Rob and I. I just love you for listening, and so many of you I got the pleasure to meet at the symposium, and so many, even though I didn't meet you, you're in our Facebook group. You can always go to Facebook and type in We Don't Die Listeners, and that's our private Facebook group, our small group of nearly 3,000 people. So I love you all. I really do. Thank everybody for their support, and just know that you're not alone. Not only are there your deceased loved ones and spirit guides that are cheering you on until you cross the finish line when your life is over, but there's also people that you have not met yet, and I know you're just connecting to us through the internet and the radio and things, but there are real people here on planet Earth that support you in what you're up to. So I'm really excited about, in my lifetime, in like the near future, having us meet face to face and start some groups together, and even being part of Wendy Zamet's and AREI's Afterlife Discussion groups. This is all exciting times. Your mind might try to tell you that it's not possible, but you know what? It is. And our mind is not always our biggest champion. There's a lot of negativity that can come. So it might try to convince you otherwise. But I tell you, magic, miracles, afterlife, it's real. It's the real deal, my friend. So as a reminder, our home base is WeDon'tDieRadio.com. You can get yourself a We Don't Die blue wristband there. Very fashionable. It's the thing to have. And the inside it says, I am a divine soul. Rob's got one. I know he does.
I got one.
Yeah,
Yep,
you
I
do. So you just don't forget who you are. That's the point of it. And then also on WeDon'tDieRadio.com, I've got a very healing audio called How to Survive Grief, which grief is just awful. And I think one of the reasons our teams in the afterlife are trying to connect you with your loved ones is because of how painful grief is. And and for you to know that the afterlife is a reality. And I created a report also called the 19 Reasons to Believe in the Afterlife. So that's a pretty cool report that I have created. So in closing, I want to thank you for listening. Thanks again, Rob Blackburn, for being our fabulous guest. And in closing, my name is Sandra Champlain, and I am so happy that I get to be your host on We Don't Die Radio. And I do believe that life is an education for the soul, and that your life here on earth is important. And I give you the not really challenge or homework or anything, but maybe before you go to bed or when you wake up in the morning or when you can find some quiet time, take Rob's advice. Just sit quietly with that intention to connect to the spirit world, to be used. However, it feels good if there's a lot of love present, but just pay attention to your breath and just see what happens. Quiet down. And that is when we're at the most quiet in our mind that we can really listen. So, want to thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.